Yes, sir. Okay, there's a good question. Is the Speaker of the House of Commons partisan, bipartisan, non-partisan? All of the above. Gib Perrant, our Speaker, is a Liberal. And, you know, a Liberal is a Liberal. He tries his best to be non-partisan. We have a very strict code, I guess, that we're working off of in question period this time. It used to be that it looked to us, anyway, we did some timing, that he'd let the bloc go on, and then, of course, he'd let cabinet ministers go on. But now that we have 5 parties in the House, the House leaders all got together, and the Speaker is being very strict about it, and I'm glad about that. I got cut off the other day, but he is letting people ask questions for 35 seconds, period. And then he stands up and your mic goes off. He is also being much, I think, fair in this Parliament by letting the cabinet ministers go on only for 35 seconds, and then they get cut off as well. So I think that's a refreshing change that we've seen. It's not anything to do with the magnanimity of the Speaker, but just the logistics of so many opposition parties in the House. And so I think that he's been very fair in that way. When push comes to shove, blood's thicker than water. Yes, sir. Okay. What were the repercussions of all the parties walking out of the House? All the parties didn't walk out of the House. We are not given to theatrics and you know, gimmicks and cutesy things like that. But on the first bill of a new Parliament, the CPP, which is, of course, the biggest thing going on, when they brought in time allocation and shut off the debate that night, Preston got up and just said that, you know, that this was wrong and should not happen. And then he just walked out in disgust, and we followed him, and the NDP joined us. So the Bloc and the Tories, of course, the Tories, they were there. All 20 of them, they were there. And they stayed with the Liberals. They, incidentally, have voted with the Liberals more than anybody else in this Parliament. And we went out and just said, look, we're not trying to be cute, we're not trying to play games here, but we need to bring to the Canadian public's attention the fact of what's happening here with CPP premiums being hiked so much. And, you know, I mean, it gets on the evening news, and the Liberals know that we are going to play hardball with them. But, you know, again, they have a majority, and away they go. So the repercussions aren't that we're going to change the legislation. I wish I could say that. But they rammed it through the House. They're going to ram it through committee, and they'll ram it through the Senate. Again, wake up. You know, we got a bill coming for you here quickly. So that'll get them going. Yes, sir. Oh, a supplementary. Yep, that's good. A promise made is a bill unpaid. Yeah, that's good. And I think politicians are just all too free with the promises during elections. And I'm at a hat trick right now. I've just won my 3rd election. And I'm not bragging, but I'm proud to say that I have never, ever made a promise that I couldn't or didn't keep in the heat of an election campaign. And I think that we need more people like that. And I'm sure it happened here in this constituency with reformers as well. It was never very popular to go out on the campaign trail and say, look, you know, I promise I'm going to spend less. You know, I mean, 10 years ago, that would have been just absolutely unheard of. Okay, this is a question about our energy resources here in Alberta and this summit that's coming up on greenhouse gases in Kyoto, Japan next month. Our environment minister has been very, very scary in terms of saying we're going to go back to the 1990 levels. She says we are going to sign that treaty. Nobody knows what's in that treaty, and she's going at it absolutely backwards. The way you should do it is get together with all the provincial ministers, find out what our bargaining chips are going to be, and go over there and say we want this, 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 this. We're prepared to give, but we want this. And then you go with a bargaining position and say, if these criteria are met, then we'll maybe sign this international deal. She said in question period last week and this week, well, we're going to go and sign this deal, and it will incur costs. That's the phrase that we need to be really afraid about. And they just laugh every time we say, could this be the National Energy Program too? And they go, oh, come on. And then Ralph Goodale, who is the energy minister, just in the scrum the other day said, well, you know, well, we would never call it that. And they just say we're crazy bringing this up. But I tell you, just the signals that they have sent us, I'm really nervous that we will have just another reproduction of this kind of stuff. And of course, our oil industry is going well right now. It's on the upturn. And if they do something like that, boy, I tell you, I just would hate to predict what would be coming out of Alberta. Are we responsible with the environment? Of course we are. Do we care? Do we have good plants? Yes, we do. But you see something like that where they're just kind of saying, well, who's our resource sector? And I could tell you 2 Liberals who won't be around next time if that happens out of Alberta. Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's about the justice system. How can the public have input, or, could you ever have a referendum on that, I guess, which gives the actual power into the hands of the people. I'm not sure. Do you guys have any idea on that? Rick, come. Come to the mic. They're taping.
One way that we've addressed that is the appointment of judges. And that is the beginning of it all. If we have the government appointing their style of judge, then we've got the government style of justice. And if we can bring the judges have to be brought up to the provinces and a vote of a full legislation, and then their name sent in, and then they come up through the system, same as a Senate, equal and effective Senate. If we can start doing that with our judges and start from the top down, because now the judges are making the laws instead of the Parliament, and it's not right. So if we can get that system started, that'd go a long ways to changing it to the way we want it.
Yeah, that's excellent. And of course, the most recent example of Anne McClellan, with this new Supreme Court justice, where it was appointed by the Prime Minister, and we said, well, why can't this be opened up to make it more democratic? She says the system has worked well for 130 years, and it's just. So what are you going to do in the next 130 years? Further question? Yeah. That's a good point. And of course, the government does do scientific polls, but some of the sample sizes are very, very small. If you just look, at gun control, for instance, the Justice Minister in the last Parliament came up to our guy, Bob Mills in Red Deer, and he says, well, we just did a survey in your constituency, and they're all in favor of gun control. Turned out like they had asked 6 people, And Bob Mills got to the bottom of it there and said, how can you tell me that is a random, valid, reliable scientific survey, and it's just not. So I think, we do need to get more involved, and I would be in favor of referendum on some of these issues, and of course on capital punishment and some of these sensitive moral and ethical issues, we are in favor of that, but, they'll just never relinquish that power. And, we know that we need power to institute some of these reforms, but none of us really cares a lot about saying, oh, yeah, I really want to be Prime Minister just for the sake of being Prime Minister. I think that's what Chrétien's doing now. He says, well, I made it, I'm Prime Minister now. And you say, yeah, so? And I think his next goal, now that he is Prime Minister, is to be the Prime Minister on New Year's Eve at the year 2000 and say, I brought in the new century, Well, whoop-de-dingles. Yeah. Okay. The question was, what can reform do to sell itself in Ontario? We did well there in the 93 election. We came second in 56, I think, out of the 99 ridings. There's now 103 ridings there. And we did about the same. We thought we were going to have a great breakthrough in Ontario this time. And I have to tell you, I was pretty sad on election night because we thought, hooray, we're going to do better. I think what we need to do is make sure that there is a single alternative to the Liberals. And if you added our vote and the Tory vote, we would have taken, dozens of seats there. And so what we need to do is prove to people on the ground level, not at the leadership of the Reform and the Conservative parties, but at the ground level, at the voter level, is to say, we are the Reformers, a party with a future, and they were the Conservatives, who is a party with the past. And we need to make sure that we are showing ourselves as responsible, as a government in waiting, and I think that our position now as official opposition probably puts us in a better position for that. But we need to also make sure that our guys get out right across the province, and of course back into the Atlantic provinces as well in Quebec, to get the message out unfiltered. That is at town hall meetings, at university campuses, at high schools, on radio talk shows, so that you hear what it is I'm saying, not you hear it via, 3 other media sources based out of Toronto. So I think that's important, and it's just a pile of work. But I think that as we move around and as people see us as not being berserk, as being the official opposition, I think that we'll do better next time. I think we've built a really good base there, and I think that it stands to give us real potential the next time around. But I was sad.